Hi, I'm Sai, Chief Architect for HARC, Hitachi Application Reliability Center. I'm going to talk about changing the mindset for SRE-Led Ops. Right? Before we get into SRE-Led Ops, I want to give you a brief overview of where we are today. When it comes to architecture from 2010s, we have moved away from two-tier and three-tier architecture all the way to microservices today. Similarly, for infrastructure from on-prem, we have moved into the cloud, and then right now we are on PaaS-based, SaaS-based services. But similarly, from development, we have moved away from waterfall all the way to scaled agile, DevOps, and things like that. But when it comes to operations itself, we are still operating in silos, right? That is development, that is operations. And development team develops product, be it in the cloud, using PaaS services, using scaled agile models, but still throw it over the wall into production for operations teams to maintain. That is not a sustainable model. That is where HARC comes in, all right? We have to move away from traditional way of operating to engineering-led ops. It doesn't happen overnight. There are things that we have to do systematically so that we get there. And in addition, there are additional challenges as well, right? As we move into the cloud, cost is another major predicament, right? Instead of CapEx, you move into OpEx. And when you move into OpEx, you start paying more than what you were expecting. And that becomes a problem with the CFOs, right? That is where this problem called FinOps that we are dealing with today. So to deal with all of this is where we have come up with this services called HARC, which is designed for reliability. Don't just run things in production, but start influencing in design and development. Design for reliability, design for security, design for cost, and then a very important thing is design for green, right? It is another imperative because everywhere you maintain the data center, there is only so much optimization that you can do in the data center. But when you go into the cloud, while AWS and the cloud providers maintain it green, but you have to design the workload for you to leverage that, right? That is where we come in, right? We start designing even before the application goes into production, and there's no wall in between, right? That is where we come up with some of these metrics like error budgets, right? What happens and when can you move features into production? When should you hold back? These are metric-driven approach that we have introduced. And as you start introducing this metric-driven approach, you start pumping releases into production and more features goes into production. And there is also a metric that tells you when to stop producing features and when to start focusing on reliability. So that is where we come in when it comes to design itself. But when it comes to operations and running in production, we have introduced a thing called observability robotics. You have heard about observability, which is different from typical traditional monitoring. Because in observability, you will be able to ask questions, interrogate with the system, understand the state of the system at any point in time. And it is not just interrogation, but after interrogating, you should be able to act on it. That is where observability robotics comes in, which is observe, think, and act. And we have built accelerators within Hitachi for us to work on it and improve on your system. And another important thing is about incident response. Moving away from tiered responses to incidents, we have moved into something called DRI, which stands for Direct Responsible Individual. And this is where you try and cut down the amount of time spent in communication and coordination. And that is where majority of the time gets spent during an incident. And this is done using our design methodologies where we introduce observability even during design, right? Moving on, so all of this, while all of these are good, how can this happen in an enterprise? This cannot happen on day one, right? That is where our maturity assessment and the way we progress comes in. We typically start with an assessment of where our clients and customers are, and they probably fall in one of these things, right? Reactive to managed. And from there, we come up with a roadmap on how to take them all the way to predictive or preventive. Not everybody have to go all the way, right? But it is a culture. It is not the technology, it is not the processes, it is the culture, it is a mindset that has to change over time. And that is something which have to happen top down, bottom up, across the organization. But that is something which we have to build in, right, which we introduce slowly, and for every client we put together, we do an assessment, we understand where they are, we define where they ought to be, which is a combined discussion between us and the client, and we chart a roadmap for them so that we get to where they want to in a defined period of time. So in a nutshell, getting into SRE-led operations and is not a one and done. It does not happen overnight. It is a journey. You have to take it, and it is a cultural journey. You have to transform from where you are to where you want to be. Thank you.